Welcome to my channel, fellow rotorheads. Today we are flying to Mr. D's place. I would love to create a mod or have a mod created of Mr. D's place. Maybe someone can help with that. I think it will be a fascinating addition to the modscape, specifically because of his penchant for landing on a trailer. One of the great challenges in helicopter flight sim is landing on a trailer, and in real life, to hear Mr. D tell it. Today's video is supposed to be about comparing which sim feels most like the real thing in terms of flight dynamics. It was supposed to be based on how the real MD-500 feels. As I went out to hover and try out different flight regimes, I had multiple camera views, but only one ended up being recorded. That one view did manage to capture the absolute joy on my face as I successfully hover and at times keep the aircraft perfectly still. Mr. D obliged me by demonstrating that I actually did have full control of the helicopter. So I'll just have to use this clip as another plug for the Captain Helisim experience with Mr. D. You should definitely come to check it out if you can. In the end, today I'm going to talk about a different thing. Someone asked me what was I most surprised by in real flight that I did not expect coming out of flight sim. And after thinking about it for some time now, I do have 4 things that are surprising and unexpected, and I'm going to share them with you now. I also want to preface that, in my opinion, these things are caused by deficiencies in the flight simulators to some degree. The first item is maintaining altitude. It turns out that this is a rather common experience for many new helicopter pilots, porpoising in the sky. You would think that a vehicle with a gigantic rotor on its head would be naturally stable like a gyroscope. Not that one. But for some reason it's not. Fixed-wing aircraft have 2 advantages. They have a natural stability, and they also often incorporate autopilot. Helicopters generally have neither of these advantages. And so it turns out that maintaining altitude is actually something that does not come naturally. And to some extent, the rate of ascent and descent, even down to only 200 feet per minute, is something you learn to feel. Moreover, the rate of climb indicator is a lagging indicator. By the time it's registering that you are changing altitude, it's already happened. It's a past event indicator. So if you're trying to stabilize the rate of climb, you're chasing something that has already happened. Essentially, you have to learn to feel when the helicopter is changing altitude, and that's impossible if you're sitting in your chair in a flight simulator. The second thing I find surprising is the difficulty in maintaining heading. Most of the time in the flight simulator, I choose places that have texture and features, and I fly aimlessly, enjoying those textures and features and positioning my aircraft in relation to them. But in reality, most of the time you are flying to a destination, straight line, and you're following the magenta line on the navigator. And if you're flying over a featureless terrain, it's kind of difficult to position your aircraft in such a way as it's flying the most efficient straight line, especially in a helicopter that has no particular stability. So you're being drifted by winds and turbulence. The aircraft itself is swirling around. The chopper flies tilted, and it's often crabbing in the wind. You're looking off to one side to fly straight. So I find myself often porpoising around the magenta line as well. Now stick with me here, because I am going to make some suggestions on possible solutions for these issues. The next 2 issues are separate but related. The first is watching for obstructions. Things like low-hanging wires, towers, birds, and other aircraft. Mr. D has eagle eyes. He's able to see way out into the distance and see things and point them out to me long before I ever spot them. I don't know if this is inherent to his eyesight or if he learned to see this way. As a photographer, I remember wishing that I could see what a good photographer can see, because photographer eyes are different than normal eyes. You're able to see whether a picture is going to be good or not if an environment is going to be good or not. And I remember looking forward to being able to see that way, and eventually I learned it. And I wonder if pilots have that same sense where they can see way out into the distance things that ordinary people can't see. But I can tell you that when he says watch out for those towers, and there are a lot of towers in Texas, probably across the entire country, it takes me a long time to figure out what he's talking about. And the last thing that doesn't match up between Flight Simulator and the real thing is peripheral awareness. Mr. D kind of kids around a little bit with me about my flying like I'm looking through a tunnel. I'm not aware of what's going on around me. I'm not aware of the side vision of any aircraft that are approaching, balloons, or whatever is coming out from the sides. I don't seem to be aware of that. And I thought about that, and I agree with him. He is correct about it. And why is that? The reason is I use a VR headset. I do that because it is 3D, and it allows me to look in any direction when I need to. The issue is that it's not just when you need to be aware of 180 degrees in front of you and around you, because something could be approaching that may be a problem for you. And you should be able to see things even if you're not looking at them. And again, that's fairly difficult if you're flying essentially with a scuba mask on. I bet if I put a scuba mask on Mr. D, he'd be pretty annoyed. That's what it's like flying in the simulator with a VR helmet. So to summarize, what was I most surprised about? Maintaining altitude, maintaining heading, flight path obstructions, and peripheral awareness. Now, what we're dealing with here is balancing realism versus the hassle of realism. I'm going to paraphrase Michael Scott's take on responsibility. I want all the enjoyment of flying without any of the responsibility. If we take this realism to the logical extent, I'm going to be filling out paperwork, doing the walkarounds, paying for fuel, paying for insurance, paying for medical checkups. I don't want to do any of that. I just want to enjoy. So we all have to decide at what point are we done chasing the realism. And the only reason I'm addressing this at all is because there is a difference between flight sim and the real experience. And these areas are the ones that make me the most uncomfortable when I have the privilege of actually flying. So for me and anyone who imagines putting their hands on a real aircraft, there is some sense in trying to become comfortable with these concepts. So I'm going to offer some thoughts on ways to improve performance here. Some are free, some cost little, and some are very costly. And it's up to you to decide how much attention you want to pay to any of these items. So let's start with the first one, maintaining altitude. This is a freebie from Mr. D. Once you achieve stable level flight, look out the front of the helicopter and visually measure the distance between the horizon and the rotor disc. That distance is the distance you should maintain to maintain altitude. You'll have to use some kind of visual memory device, like measure in terms of how many inches you think that might be. 10 inches, 5 inches, 15 inches. Whatever the number is, try to maintain that distance, and you will find that it helps you maintain altitude. From time to time, check back at your altitude and the rate of descent and make adjustments as necessary. That's the free advice. The costly advice is, maybe this is a good reason to buy a motion rig. It could be that a motion seat that responds to movements in the helicopter helps you understand the way the helicopter is moving. That would be Mr. D's suggestion. You may not get a full sense of acceleration, but the movement and the adjustment to the fact that you're suddenly diving or rising can help you develop a sense of feeling for what's actually happening in the helicopter without relying exclusively on visual cues. Second item, maintaining heading. Another freebie from Mr. D. This one's a little more obvious. First, make sure you are on the correct flight path. Confirm that with your navigation. Then look out way out in the distance to the vast expanse and find something that stands out. A light spot, a dark spot, a building if you're lucky, and aim towards that. When you reach that, check your navigation again and repeat the procedure. That should help minimize the wander off the magenta line. Next item, flight path obstructions. I don't feel like the stock flight sims do a very good job depicting what actual towers look like. This isn't Microsoft, but this is representative of most of the flight sims. As we approach these towers, they easily stand out. It's impossible to miss them. In real life, they blend into the background, and it's very hard to spot them, to say nothing of the guide wires that support them, at least to the uninitiated like me. I was unable to find any weather condition in Microsoft Flight Sim that replicates the kind of atmospheric haze I see in real life that obscures radio towers. Perhaps Flight Sim 2024 will offer some improvement there. There are a couple of mods in Flight Sim that are free and offer some relief for the other elements that I spoke of. The user LifeNet on flightsim.to creates tight landing zone mods that often have low-hanging wires. His mods are great in general for landing challenges. I'm also experimenting with FSLTL to see if I can get some helicopter traffic happening, but so far in my experimentation, just having active aircraft flying around in the sky is a great awareness improvement, as well as just making Flight Sim a more realistic and aesthetically pleasing experience. And in the X-Plane community, there is a payware mod that just adds birds in the sky, and I recommend it. I think as a matter of completeness, having the potential of helicopter bird strikes should also be incorporated in the list of possible emergency failure modes. I've included links for everything I've mentioned in the description below. For the final issue, peripheral awareness, I'm afraid I don't have a practical solution for that. It does occur to me that perhaps VR is not the optimum visual solution. There are people who put up 3 monitor screens, and while to me that looks cumbersome and suboptimal on a moving motion rig, it does have the advantage of providing that peripheral vision that VR does not currently offer. I was hoping that the Pimax platform would be a wider screen view, but the Crystal model that I have really doesn't offer that much of an improvement over the Vario. We can hope that VR headsets of the future take that into account going forward. Anyway, those are my thoughts for now. I hope that was interesting and informative to you, and I look forward to your comments and questions. I always enjoy reading them. And until next time, may the feeling of that rotor wash over you.
Huh? Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.